So she mentioned the abstract. When I wrote the abstract, I had no clue what I was actually going to present. So I kind of gave it a title, Humans as Code. This is not what I do daily. People might know me from the DevOps world, but I gave about 130 talks on DevOps. So please watch these. This is about my hobby, which I picked up probably early pandemic. And I hope it inspires you to maybe explore the same field, because at least it was exciting for me. My journey started with, like many of you, you are at home, remote, you have to present. It's not the same thing as it is here today. There's no audience. And you want to do this the best way you can. So like everybody, I played around with a green screen, right? We're all kind of either it's Zoom, I bought a green screen, I wanted to present this really well. But yeah, it wasn't that easy. They sell this to you as being quite easy. You just, do a few sliders and you have this magic view that, your background is going to be removed. Even kind of the spill reduction, the name alone, right? Okay, what does it mean? Okay, you start moving this, you kind of get an okay-ish kind of background, but hey, I want to do better, right? It needs to be well, otherwise it's not believable, it's a toy. So I got this, finally, it's not about the green screen and not buying that much about whether it's the green or perfect green or all that stuff. It is all about getting your lighting right. And more light, as that person says. And actually, to do this right, I built this in my home, right? I had like 2 lights going on the green screen, like 2 lights on me, and then even a light behind me, because if you have the green screen behind you and the light is too hard, you get bleeding through your colors, that your hair is starting to get green as well. So, okay, sorry, I'm a nerd, I'm an engineer, I do this kind of things, but it was fun to learn. But you look at all the videos on internet and it looked like rubbish, right? Even with the lighting and you buy pro gear, no fun. Until I found this kind of, at least some science in this madness, the inverse square of the law of light. So there is a reduction, how far the light stands with you, and that's something that really helped me to get the lighting right, position this right behind me, in front of me, and to get this better. So at least, it took me a long time to actually get this tip, instead of saying, well, buy this, buy that. But hey, people sell you all the time more tools. But that's not how it works. But then I'm going to tell you a new tool that I found. It's a little app that you can actually use to see how your green screen is evenly lit. It helped me on very much of the occasions where my eye would be saying, hey, looks good, okay. But at least the science proved me, take the app, it's not okay. It's like light here, there, it's not evenly. So this really helped me. And if you're a developer, operator, whatever, there's nothing like the real thing. There's nothing like production. But I learned that in the movie industry, they have the same thing. You do the recording live with the actors, you do all that stuff, and they have a saying, we'll fix it in post. Because reality is, you don't do it correctly when you do this. And you see a little bit of the hair, the thin lines, and it's really hard to get this right on a green screen. So they do this either in Photoshop or they kind of like put the touches on. Another thing that I learned, science, or at least engineering, is that I could buy a webcam, a better webcam. I think I had like 5 webcams, better resolutions, all that stuff. But in the end, the image got compressed. So if you're near the lines of the hair, that means, well, if the sensor doesn't pick up the correct lighting, or at least the editing program doesn't get the correct data, then you're not getting the perfect hair. So you buy a DSLR and then you go look this up, 444 compression, Chroma subsampling. And after that, I was starting to get decent results. But again, spent a lot of gear, money, but hey, I wasn't traveling, so what else to spend this on? And then I learned about doing this a little bit more automated. When I was fixing this in post, the editor programs, they have something called rotoscoping. You can basically draw the area that we want to have the green screen extracted, and using, I should probably not put AI, but some machine learning, it kind of does a better job. And even online, as you can see here, it's getting really easy. Select the person, green screen, done. So it was my first glimpse as, hey, all these manual things, there's something with machine learning that could really help us to do a better job of this. But this is my lesson from Greenscreen, and I'm probably not the only one in the industry. It's so hard to get this right. And I don't want to have like an office where there's lights in front, behind me, green screen. This setup is too elaborate. Of course, right? You watch the Mandalorian movie, and they do it really well. They even have these amazing screens behind the actors, which are LED screens, where they actually project the environment on they want. So the actors get correctly lit from the scene that you're doing. And many of these kind of companies that do this, they're actually using a game engine. You might be familiar with this. Epic Games, Unreal Engine. And, like many of them, I tried to build a virtual set, a little bit like a new set. Doesn't look too well, but at least I kind of had some progress. And I was putting the green key in a virtual scene, which was okay, but I had limitations. What if I were looking with a virtual camera at myself, but the image of the green screen was just the plane? So if I look like this, it would be okay because it's kind of frontal, but if I would from the sides, it would not kind of be a good view. So I learned a few tricks where you kind of move the plane while you're moving the camera, but it's still like, it's like, a gimmick. It didn't really work well. I tried something else because I couldn't afford the LED screens. So I bought a projector and started to project this behind me. Well, good projectors are expensive, so I kind of like moved away from that track. But, if you have it lying around or somebody else has it, it's a fun way to really absorb and kind of move you into the scene. I even discovered another way. And people doing photography, they might know about HDRI and kind of HDR, which are kind of pictures in different exposures, and they have kind of a good way of capturing the whole dynamic of the color space. And you can do this with a 360 camera as well, where they kind of do the auto-stitching around you. And then again, in Unreal Engine, you basically say, hey, put this image around the area quite easily. So this is now probably from, I don't know, a golf course or something, but you could probably do this quite easily with a 360 camera and put this in there as well. So you can move around and do this nicely. Then I guess many of the engineers working on these camera sets in the movie industry, like this is Matt Workman, and he's a brilliant person. He used to work in for the Mandalorian and similar things. He had this crazy idea. What if we built a handheld camera and we put a tracker on there? And I don't know if any are you into some gaming and VR, but one of the trackers is actually used from there. So the base stations are used to kind of position your VR headset and to see where you are looking in a VR space. So it kind of sends these base stations send kind of a light period, and that's how they kind of know from the headset where you are in the space that you've calibrated. And somebody open sourced this kind of model, which is basically you watch the field monitor, which is showing you the Unreal Engine plus the Chroma key. You put a camera on top of there, and the Vive tracker will, in the virtual world, kind of track the correct place where you put the camera. And this gives you an idea. He's doing this in a home studio, kind of indie-based. You can get these, like, this Greenscreen, 300 euros or something. It's like, he's an indie movie producer, but you see he's using an Unreal Engine, an environment, and he's just using a handheld camera that you can buy from, let's say for 200 euros or something, with pieces and an Arduino and all that stuff. You couple this together. So this kind of blew the whole community into virtual production as a space, and many people tried to mimic this. They didn't have all the kind of budget that Hollywood had. So this was fun, and you saw a lot of tricks going on there. And then all of a sudden, boom, Unreal Engine or Epic Games released something new, Metahumans. And that was before the other company kind of blah, blah, blah. Okay. But what was interesting is before, everybody wanted to create an avatar, and they had to resort to things like photogrammetry. It's even hard. So you see on the left all the pictures taken, and they're kind of stitching this together and create the 3D model. It looks easier than it really is. There's a lot of cleaning from the 3D model. There's a lot of polishing. The cameras, I don't know, like there's whole studios with like 500, 600 cameras to do this fast. With one DSLR at home, I wasn't really going in the right direction. Became a little bit easier, and you might not be aware of this, but many of the phones have a LiDAR, which is kind of like, the DAR comes from a little bit like light radar, and it sends these light beams to the object, and your phone is really good at this. And so even with a decent phone that has this opportunity, you'll be able to do like 3D scans of persons, and then it does the stitching for you. So it was a real saver in time, because it made it like immensely more accessible to people. There's many apps out there that kind of do that. But then you probably also saw something similar. Like, yes, we're in the movie industry, kind of with a free Unreal Engine, which is insane. But just by uploading an image from one person, this tool, and probably many of the other tools you've seen, are able to create a 3D model of just one picture. Again, there's some machine learning in there, there's some math, there's some rendering, but it is pretty crazy to do this when you see this. But reality, again, just like the body scanning, there would be people spending days and days cleaning up this first scan and making sure it's correct. So it's not something I'm able to do. Again, it gave me a gimmick if I would do it on myself. But, there's real artists out there that are able to do this. And then it's a fun world, because you have a virtual model, and then of course they try to sell you, well, you need makeup to make it look good, or tattoos, or anything else, and then ka-ching, ka-ching, you buy more, you need pants, you need, it just keeps selling you. It wasn't very viable for me doing it on my own, because yes, I get it if you're really into that world, but hey, I already spent a lot of money, so this was going to be harder. So maybe some of you are familiar with the Uncanny Valley, and it's the concept that we're okay with 3D models, seeing 3D models of people, animal stuff, if they're not realistic. If they get close to being realistic, they start feeling cringy. And this was like in the 1970s, this professor created like this image of itself. I think it's, from that day, it's looking pretty okay, but still it's like something makes you uneasy. But I mentioned the Metahumans they released. I don't know how about you, but this really starts looking like a real human person to me. Like the level of detail is insane. Of course, you need to buy a new GPU and NVIDIA, like ka-ching, but this is really, this is a level I can accept if I were to achieve that. But again, it works on the level of detail, which they improve. So if you come closer to certain areas, they kind of like zoom in. It's like, adaptive or whatever you call it. But the level that you've seen before, this is kind of insane, right? And the lighting, and because it's a rendering engine and it can do insane things. So they released this web tool where you can upload your own picture, which kind of mixes and matches it, and you choose kind of some of the faces that are closest to you. So you don't have to do the whole body thing. You're kind of like putting it on there, but they're kind of mixing and matching the two of them. The results are pretty astonishing if you do this. And then, of course, you need to adapt the body. What's your style? Where are your arms? Like my upper body is longer than my lower body. So it's kind of like it all needs to adapt if you want to do it really well. But besides having that human and that body model, they went one step further and they turned this into a rigged person where it's like a puppeteer. You can be a puppeteer. Like you can move the fingers and it moves the fingers. You can move the arms, and so it really becomes not a static scan. It's something that starts to move. And then, I already had the lighthouses. So you buy a few more VR trackers, you put it on your hands, on your kind of feet, on your body, 7 trackers, you use Steam VR. Yeah, okay, it was okay, but the body motion wasn't the most wild thing. What was really interesting is that you couldn't just take your trackers and match that onto the model. If you see on the left, you see spine all the way up to forearm and lower arm. And so the whole model they're using in the Unreal Engine is basically a model of a human skeleton. And so they know that a joint, if it moves, it just doesn't go up. If it goes up, they're connected to like several things. So they have this, what they call an inverse kinetic model that really makes it more realistic when it starts moving. An alternative to this kind of more mechanical view of the world where everything's connected to that, they're starting to do more of this with computer vision, where they kind of look at humans and say, like, how is this connected? It's not up to the level of, all the detail and all the bones in your body, but it could be in a way. But it's interesting how this tedious process of connecting all the bones and making this movement kind of got moved again to machine learning and computer vision. But I had the body, I had the head, it was moving. I still needed to have my face. And for that, many of the people use their phone. And the reason is because your phone already has face recognition. And part of the face recognition, it uses this kind of model of the face. So many of them have like a link that tracks the eyes, tracks the model, and is able to put that expression onto the kind of the face of the 3D model. But it gets really hard. If you really have to tweak your tongue, what's the depth of your tongue? Because the tongue isn't recognized, your face is recognized. So it's like, come on, if I do this, I can't build presentations, right? So it's it's too much work. So this is kind of where it looks like they're more professional kind of motion capture suits. They kind of range around 1,500 to up to 10,000 or even more. But they all have a headset, the phone in the front of them, and they capture this realistically. So what you're basically doing is you're recording your motion. So instead of having to code this all the time yourself, go left, do this, press the finger, you're capturing the motion. And then you can replay that motion again. And of course, again, ka-ching. If I want to have the movement for aerobics, I can just buy it because I'm not good in aerobics. You can shoot, I can play the guitar, but yeah, more money, more spending. Yeah, great ideas. The fingers were particularly hard. You usually say, start with the leap motion. You might remember this from a while ago. Then they use the index controllers, clunky. I think it's only realistic when people start doing this with smart gloves, but people are really doing this. So I don't know if you heard about the concept of VTubing. It's people who go on YouTube, but they do it with a virtual avatar. And you see that person wearing this motion suit, the gloves, and they're doing this. So it's not Hollywood. People are doing this, they're buying this in their home, and they're trying to do this really realistically. So I had the body motion, went away from the green screen. I still needed to have my voice automated, right? Because I don't want to talk all the time. I came across the concept of a spectrogram. The spectrogram is really interesting. You kind of know from the sound waves how it goes. You can think about harmonics, how the sound wave goes. But a spectrogram is kind of a logarithmic compression of kind of the voice spectrum, and it takes into account many of the pitch, and it almost creates a visualization of the voice. Yes, I can train a model, and there's many models out there. There's the stupid model where you have each word and then you kind of paste them together. Then there's a little bit more predictive that they can make sentences automatically if you tell them right. But the text-to-speech also requires quite some training. And it's basically a rundown from, I type a text, I'm your father, and it converts this into an audio signal. It seems like a lot of work. And there's an additional problem, which I don't think is really solved well yet, is if I say bird, there's the difference in my age, where I came from, the accent, but also what's my emotion on this. So it's like just typing the word bird or conference gives what is it. So if you have a voice and even a model, this is really a harder problem than generating just the text. Otherwise, it becomes like this droning voice. It's the same pitch, it's the same thing all the time. So that's why they start doing annotations and say this sentence in annoyed, say this sentence in sassy. So you're annotating the text in a way that you're doing this. It's not really that fun, but at least you can do this. Again, ka-ching, you can buy all the voices you want. And obviously, the root, this has been used in voiceovers and dubbings in movies, even creating additional dialogue. So I mentioned fix it in post. Sometimes they say like, oh, everybody was on the set. Oh, I really needed that extra sentence because then in the plot, it makes this really look well. So people are using these tools to create this extra sentence from the voice, from the actor, instead of having to ask the actor back. So why am I saying this? I was pretty blown away by this tool. Who knows Overdub? Any of you? Okay, oh, very few. So I give a talk, I record it. It transcribes the audio into text, nothing particular. But I can start moving the text around. I can say, well, this paragraph is actually easier if I move it below, or like I can do the buildup of my talk even after I was able to record this. And my favorite part is like I remove all the ums and uhs because I do that all the time. And I can even, like the ADR, I can type an extra word. in the sentence. And these tools generate not just the audio, but they kind of take the video into account as well. So this is really powerful video editing as text as I've never seen before, because cutting pieces, removing, swapping text just as video was really, really hard. So this kind of tool blew me away. And then there's the next step. I have the audio, and audio has a lot to do with phonemes. I think that is kind of the pronunciation. But whenever you kind of utter certain sounds with your mouth, it actually also has a place how your lips go. So they're taking the phonemes into visomemes, and they kind of translate this. And then you saw the emergence of other tools. You record the audio, you say, this was the word that I meant, or kind of the phoneme, and then the tool actually generates the lip sync automatically from this. So I didn't have to move the lips and the tongue. It was just automated. And there's, these tools are now available. They're a fraction of the price, like $10, $20. It's all accessible. Final step, synthetic media. Synthetic media is more like media that gets created of things that didn't exist, don't really exist. So it's not like it's my voice, it's a voice that was created. And we all kind of, seen enough of the deepfakes in the world. And you can probably spot, kind of around the face area that there's artifacts. And to give you an idea, 1 minute of deepfake, the post-editing, first the generation of the model, a couple of weeks for professionals, and then probably a couple of weeks of post-editing in the video. So it's not something, of course you can play with the tools and they're there, and the professionals use the same tools, but there's a lot of cleanup to be done. But, I played around with deepfakes. Again, didn't really look that amazing. But then you start to think about this website. Which face is real? You can't really tell that well anymore. This was actually created because of the part of the Congress, like the Calling Bullshit project. Like, yes, it can be getting really dangerous because the realism is so high. But these tools are just getting available. You want to create a face, just click the expression, sunglasses, and you're just creating unique photos of people who don't exist. Pretty amazing. And then the other day there was a post about all these profiles, and they look like, oh, really nice people. But they were all profiles from people on LinkedIn, and they were fake. And the way they could see it was fake because the cross in the middle was just too perfect. So, you can go over the top and then it tells you again. There's been more creative use. Obviously, with the deepfake technology, people have been using this for live translation. So I speak in English. The video is live translated in another language, and the lips are kind of already automatically changed on my face. So the same speaker does that simultaneously. So this can be done, obviously, for any speaker, but this was also actually done in politics, where one politician in India used multiple languages to kind of get a bigger reach of voters, or kind of try to explain this. Another interesting experiment people have done is they call it deepfake therapy. So when you lose a person in your life, it can be really therapeutical if you want to talk one more last time to that person. I know people keep their voicemails on their phone just to listen back to that person. But in this session, they actually had a person doing the puppeteering of a deep fake, and they could ask questions to that person, like a final say goodbye. And you see the emotions, even though they knew it was like somebody else, but the fact it really helped them in the grieving. A little bit more lighter, right? We all know the music industry, and they want to have, the top rock bands or whatever, or the pop stars, but they can get really expensive, and having them perform all the time. So they start experimenting with virtual bands, much like the VTubers, but they're performing just in a virtual way. So they're projecting this while they're performing. So they're actually performers, but we don't know who they are. They're virtual performers. It scales better to do a lot of conferences or concerts like that. Interesting. This I find particular interesting. It's like a tennis match, never been played before. Two people just used of past videos, and they're playing these matches. So imagine you're creating betting on top of this. Blows my mind that this looks so realistic, what people are trying to do. You can see I'm getting more and more excited by the end of the talk. So on the left, you see the model, and on the right, you see the model plus the deepfake. You still see the artifacts, but that was intentional. So you can see how realistic using a model and the deepfake technology together that I created. By the way, Chris, you and me started a company out of this. You might know him from the Tom Cruise memes that you see on the internet. And just by doing that, it went viral, and he started a company on synthetic media. And this, maybe the final example, you type in text. This looks kind of like a real person to me. You select the full body, the background, done. So this is where things are heading, right? Of course, you can use it for marketing, but you can use it for documentation to keep that up to date from text. You can imagine, and that's probably why I selected the title Humans as Code, because it's almost getting an API call away to do this stuff. Like any tech, explosion of tools. I think it's exciting where this will end. Books, this is for reference. If you're a little bit into deep learning, and I'm not a data scientist, the book Deep Learning, the cover looks like for, an how-to and the basic. Best book I ever read on this. Like, it doesn't tell you any math, and he just explained the problems that at least I could understand that. So it's a really good tip. The others are more generic, photorealism or like the impact on society, but they're all interesting. So what did I learn? It's a different type of automation. Like, it's not your pipeline and go through, it's events, it's kind of dynamic, it's like data, anyway, I was excited many years ago about DevOps. I'm excited about this right now. I don't think we're there yet. I think you kind of seen that the front body, the voice is getting to an okay state, but the complexity of having all the bones move in the right place and kind of the emotions, that's really hard. So I don't think, remember the one-to-many problem, that is currently solved. It's a hobby, but it inspired me to do more about machine learning and AI. I'm trying to understand how these effects work, even though I'll probably never succeed, but it gives me something to explore. This is the end of the talk. If you want to talk to me on the Twitters, I'm available. And I'll be happily managing your Kubernetes clusters and so on. If you're a company in this field, contact me. hire me, and that's it. I hope it inspires you.
It was funny because you were saying like, oh, I've got 70 slides. I don't know how long it's going to take me. And it flew by. And I saw so much of the audience really, really engaged and interested in what you were talking about. And I wanted to say thank you so much for sharing all of this with us, Patrick. I think there's so many questions that we have for you, but if there's one question that I could ask you is, would you come back to Jay on the Beach?
Sure. Yeah, I like the mixture of the data science, technology, the people, the nice atmosphere. So of course I'll be back.